The most horrific shipwrecks of our time. Life at sea is unforgiving. Sailors face storms, mechanical failures, navigational errors, and other threats lurking in the vastness of the ocean on a daily basis. Sometimes such incidents end in tragedy, and sometimes they become the beginning of legends about incredible rescues. Today, we will tell you about the most terrible maritime accidents of recent years. Early in the morning of October 31st, 2018, a ferry named Jane in Excellent was sailing to its home port of Barcelona when a massive port crane suddenly collapsed onto its deck. Although the hull of the ship was severely damaged, surprisingly, none of the 60 people on board suffered serious injuries. But the falling crane punctured the ferry's fuel tank and caused a fire that engulfed the ship at the pier. It took firefighters almost 3 hours to bring the fire under control. The incident was classified as a collision with a stationary object caused by operational errors. Strong winds were blowing in Barcelona that day, which blew the ship off course and prevented it from mooring safely. Fortunately, no one was killed. Only a few passengers were hospitalized due to panic reactions. However, in another, equally well-known corner of southern Europe, Venice, people were much less fortunate. There, one of the pleasure boats collided with a concrete pier, and there were significantly more casualties than in Barcelona. The materials on this case caused a great stir, and the investigation is still ongoing. The traces of these events remind us how chance can change the fate of sailors forever. On June 3, 2019, a horrific incident occurred. A huge 66,000-ton cruise ship lost control and crashed into a small motorboat carrying 5 passengers in the port. The crew of the large ship lost control. Before the collision, people rushed to all available ropes and tried to slow down the ship, but one of the ropes broke, and the powerful ship literally crushed the smaller vessel against the pier. The sight was horrific. The small vessel was crushed like a tin can, and the wheel, but not all accidents involve ships. There are also disasters involving towing mechanisms, the so-called mules of the Panama Canal. These special locomotives accompany ships through the 82-kilometer arc of the canal, ensuring safe passage. However, even they sometimes suffer defeat. In 2015, one such tractor was completely destroyed when a huge container ship crashed into it and easily flattened its sturdy metal frame. Fortunately, neither people nor the ship itself suffered fatal losses in that accident. There have also been environmental disasters in recent history. For example, in October 2011, the MV Irina ran aground on a reef near one of the large atolls, carrying about 1,500 containers of fuel oil. The ship ran aground, broke in half months later, and spilled about 200 tons of fuel into the water, rendering the coastal waters uninhabitable and destroying the local fishing industry. The investigation found human error to be the main cause of the tragedy, with the crew bearing full responsibility. Another major accident was the result of a technical malfunction. A luxury Norwegian cruise ship suffered a leak in its fuel tank, which led to additional problems. On March 23, 2019, all 4 engines on board the Viking Sky, which was carrying more than 1,000 passengers, failed simultaneously, and the ship began to drift uncontrollably towards the shallows. Due to the storm, tugboats and lifeboats were unable to approach. The crew barely managed to start at least one engine to move the ship away. Finally, one of the tragedies was caused by human error. Off the coast of Singapore, an American warship collided with a tanker loaded with chemicals and oils. As a result of the accident, the crew's cabins, engine room, and bridge were flooded. 10 sailors died. The military subsequently blamed the ship's crew. After the main control system failed, the backup system was not activated for unknown reasons. The victims pointed to a lack of mutual understanding between crew members and the overload of the ship. Such incidents leave deep scars not only on the hulls of ships, but also in the minds of those who survived them. Eyewitness accounts, photos and videos spread across social media. The press and investigation commissions meticulously reconstruct the chain of events and look for weak links, from human error to design flaws and procedural shortcomings. Often, after high-profile accidents, new safety regulations are introduced, mooring rules and crew training are reviewed. One of the most tragic incidents involving the U.S. Navy occurred on June 17, 2017. The destroyer Fitzgerald collided with the Philippine container ship ACX Crystal about 80 nautical miles from Tokyo. Despite the presence of modern navigation systems, the disaster was inevitable. In just a few minutes, the ships approached each other and collided. 7 sailors were killed, and 2 senior officers and 1 sailor were suspended and brought to trial. By court order, the owners of the Philippine ship paid the U.S. Navy $27 million in compensation. Similar tragedies have happened before. In 1915, the passenger ship SS Eastland capsized in the port of Chicago. On that day, Western Electric employees gathered to celebrate their day off. There were about 2,500 people on board. When most of them went out on the upper deck, the ship began to list. Within a couple of minutes, it was lying on its side at a 45-degree angle. Water poured into the cabins, and hundreds of people were trapped. Onlookers on the shore watched in horror as the ship slowly sank, leaving behind screams and helpless cries. In 1991, a similar incident occurred with the ship MTS Okeanos. It capsized and lay on its side, but fortunately, all passengers survived. The crew, eager to leave the port as soon as possible, set sail despite the approaching storm. The unfinished reconstruction of the hull and a strong wave led to the ship sinking. Realizing the scale of the disaster, the crew panicked and abandoned the ship, leaving the passengers alone. They sent out a distress signal and were rescued, while the crew's flight was recognized as criminal negligence. A similar fate befell the Costa Concordia. In January 2012, the captain, deciding to sail closer to the Italian coast to greet his homeland, made a fatal mistake. The ship ran aground after hitting an underwater rock. There were 4,200 people on board, almost twice as many as on the Titanic. The ship lost speed abruptly and panic ensued. Despite the rapid evacuation, some passengers died. The captain abandoned ship prematurely and was subsequently convicted. But even these disasters pale in comparison to the sinking of the RMS Lusitania. On May 7, 1915, during the First World War, the ship was torpedoed by a German submarine off the coast of Ireland and sank in just 18 minutes. Of the 1,200 people on board, only 761 survived. This event became a powerful symbol of anti-war propaganda and a reminder of the price of human life. Just 2 years later, in 1917, the French ship SS Mont Blanc collided with the Norwegian SS Immo near Halifax, Canada. The Mont Blanc was carrying explosives from New York to Bordeaux. Even a slight impact at a speed of about 1 knot caused a detonation that destroyed everything within a radius of 300 meters. The explosion generated a tsunami that destroyed coastal buildings and claimed hundreds of lives. The next day, heavy snowfall covered the city, exacerbating the suffering of the survivors. One of the most terrible maritime disasters of the 20th century was the collision of the Philippine ferry MV Dona Paz with the oil tanker MT Vector in 1987. The ferry was overcrowded, with the number of passengers almost double the permissible limit. The Vector had set sail without permission and was in a state of disrepair. After the collision, 1,500 cubic meters of fuel exploded, and the fire instantly engulfed both vessels. It took 8 hours for the disaster to be reported on land, which greatly delayed the rescue operation. Of the 4,000 people on board, only 26 survived. These tragedies remind us how fragile human life is in the face of the sea. A mistake, carelessness, or simply the whims of nature can turn a magnificent journey into a deadly nightmare in a matter of minutes.